Sick and tired of your love-hate relationship with wine?
Welcome to the Feel It Alcohol Free podcast. Hi, I'm Coach Ruby Williams.
And I'm Coach Susan Larkin.
We're two former wine lovers turned alcohol freedom coaches, exposing the lies about alcohol
and giving you, our listeners, the tools to break free so you can feel lit.
And when you're lit, you'll feel healthier, freer, and more in control of your life.
So relax, kick back, and get ready to feel lit alcohol free. Welcome back. So excited to be here with one of my really good friends. So, all right, you guys, buckle up because today we'll be chatting with Debi Talbert, and she's a coach who gets it. She's all about helping current and soon to be and hope to be grandmothers navigate their longevity with confidence and a whole lot of joy. So Debi spent years as a flight attendant and knows a thing or two about turbulence, both in the air and in real life. So now she's using those experiences to help women retrain their brains and create futures they absolutely feel remarkable about. Debi believes that the closest exit out of those unwanted habits is understanding your desires and approaching change with a scientific mindset. Getting curious, trying things out, and seeing what works. So she's here to share her unique oxygen mask framework and light a fire under your curiosity. So get ready for a conversation that's as refreshing as that feeling when the wheels touch down after a long flight. Welcome, Debi. I'm so glad you're here. You're one of my very best friends, and I'm just so excited you're here.
Thanks. I'm thrilled to be here. Hey, Susan. Hey, Ruby.
Hi. Hey. Well, that was fun with lots of flight descriptions. So will you just share a little bit more about your drinking and quit drinking story? So curious about that. And then maybe lead into why you became a mindset coach.
Sure. I'll be happy to share that, Ruby. Well, if people had said to me 10 years ago that I would be a mindset coach helping women in their grandmotherhood years really rethink their futures, I would have laughed and handed you more peanuts at 30,000 feet. I really thought that's what I was going to be doing. I was going to end up being the flight attendant in the wheelchair. But I started to notice both in myself and the other women that I worked with that we weren't broken, but yet we thought we did. It was just that it was our thoughts and we never slowed down to question them. Mm-hmm. And when I learned through the help of a coach that I could actually retrain my brain, everything began to shift for me. And that's when I realized the biggest difference between feeling stuck in my life or staying stuck in behaviors that I didn't want to be in, but I didn't know how to get out of. Yeah. That the moving forward really wasn't about more hustle and motivation. It was more behind the thoughts that I actually at the time believed were facts. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of stuff, and with the help of a coach, that's what really helped me learn how to think about my thinking. And the first thing I did was rethinking my relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
And so that's really what happened. And so then now I use everything I learned and I call it the Aging Flip Flight Plan. And then I help people learn how to train their brains and use all the tools around that. And I bring coaching into it. Yeah. And so that's really how it started, was the thinking about my thinking and dropping the story of believing I was broken.
I love that. We hear that all the time. Yeah. So because it worked for you, you wanted to become a mindset coach. And I really like that idea. And that's what Susan and I do too, this kind of scientific mindset, the curiosity piece. But what does that look like in real life? And how can someone stay open to that growth?
Oh, that's great. That's a great question. Okay, so as a flight attendant, we actually, every time before trips, there was like this briefing, and the person in charge would come on and go, "I don't do drama." I knew instantly that was going to be a dramatic flight. Okay? I mean, because the person that says they don't do drama is the person that has the most drama because they think they don't do drama, right? But what I like to say is we're all human and we're perfectly imperfect. And sometimes we do drama, but the drama never actually solves anything. And so what actually helps when the scientific mindset and where it can come in is as we're navigating those kind of sweet and salty and even lifey parts of being a human, if we can let ourselves become more curious instead of judgmental and jump right into drama, that's what really helps us. So instead of having that thought of like, what's wrong with me kind of stuff, I kind of teach my clients and work with them to kind of go like, what's going on in my brain right now? Mm-hmm. And that little difference is very subtle, but it brings you into curiosity and helps your brain look for solutions instead of dive right into that dramatic story that our brains like to do.
Yeah. That really resonates with me. I just got off a flight last night. And so when you're talking about this wheels down, I'm like, yes, we're finally home. And I was feeling tired today, just a little jet lag because I was on the West Coast. But it was like, what's the meaning I'm making about that? Because it was making me feel anxious today. But I was thinking, I'm like, okay, what are the thoughts I'm thinking about this? Am I just tired? And that's just it. It doesn't have to be this big story, right? Or right. I'm making it up like, oh, I've got all this stuff to do and la, 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 what's the meaning I'm making in my brain? And no drama.
Yeah.
Well, and that does make a difference. And that's really how, because if you think about a scientist, right, they get curious and they ask questions.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that really does help you stay out of drama, but it doesn't mean anything's gone wrong if you catch yourself in drama, because your brain is simply doing what your brain does.
Yes.
And so, and what I love is kind of what you were able to do for yourself on your drive home, right? Was you became like the air traffic controller, that when the cockpit and the pilot's in the bumpy air, they're checking with the air traffic controller around what's going on here. And so that you really asking yourself, what am I making that mean? That actually allowed you to kind of zoom in and out. Mm-hmm. And wonder about what's ahead and what's impacting me right now. And do I need to make it mean more than just I'm tired and I have jet lag?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's what our brain does, though, is it tries to make meaning of it. And being tired to me makes me anxious because it's like, oh, I can't get anything done. And so that's what my brain is telling me, right? Oh my gosh.
And then the next thing you know, you go about proving that right all day long.
Right.
Because you got into quote unquote drama of being tired.
Yes. Yeah.
And we all do it. It's not,
we all do.
Right. Yeah. And so the benefit of, and what I love about the work we do now as coaches, is we're able to help people zoom out.
Yeah.
And to think about their thinking and to actually understand, because of how we've all been taught, how the brains actually work. Yeah, so by understanding that, you can change a lot.
Yeah. And what really resonated what you said earlier is that your big, common, like kind of unwanted thought or belief was that you were broken, you mentioned. And I hear that a lot, like that kind of deep, something's wrong with me. I'm broken because I have this addiction. I have this habit that I can't seem to change. And I love that we look at it kind of in a bigger, I call it a helicopter view, like let's look at it from a different view. It could be from a future self view, but we're just really asking them to get curious and aware. Like you said, I love this, Debi, this topic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love applying that to aging because I'm approaching those years myself. And yeah, what are those thoughts about? Like, oh my gosh, I have a big birthday coming up. What are my thoughts about that? What meaning am I making about that?
Yes. How are you actually dramatizing that? And just like what you focus on and helping your clients with the alcohol part, right? Mm-hmm. What has society taught us about alcohol? Well, you could do the same thing. What has society taught us about a specific birthday number? And helping you understand, oh, this is why I'm having drama about it, because society has taught me whatever. Yeah. This number means whatever. And I, right now, I'm currently believing it. And I'm actually not questioning that belief. Yeah. So it's the same thing that people do with alcohol, right? Society has taught me that alcohol is for all these things. And really, when you help people slow down and question that, you can apply the same thing to aging.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about mindset. But I mean, I just finished Brooke Shields' book, which is entitled Brooke Shields is Not Allowed to Get Old. And I wanted to mention this book because it's really highlighting a lot of the things around aging, and that women, as you age, you kind of think you become invisible, but or there's pressure to maintain that youthful appearance. And then all about menopause. And it's like, there's a lot in this book that I think people need help around longevity and aging. And so this is such a timely topic, I think.
Well, it's true. And if you really just think about the title she gave it, Brooke Shields is not allowed to get old. But all you have to do is replace it and go, women are not allowed to get old.
Right.
Because if you look, okay, on the news, the men are still there, but the women have been slowly replaced to younger and newer versions.
Yes. Everyone looks like a Barbie doll, but the men
is the same men.
Yeah.
We still, like newscaster, right? I always think of Al Roker. He's still around, has been around forever. But even when it's females in the like weather casting role, where he did weather for the longest time, right? Then he's moved around and done different spots now, but he's still around. But yet the women, most of the time, they're totally 100% replaced.
They swap out. Really
Exactly.
good point.
So it's really not just Brooke Shields isn't allowed to get old. It's women aren't allowed to get old.
One of her examples, which is kind of funny, is like some guy, when he found out she was 60, or I think she's around 60, found out that she was 60, he just like pretended she wasn't there. It was just interesting that as we age, it's different. I'm looking forward to becoming a wise crone. I feel like it feels good to me, like this wise person. Yeah.
Right. But you have been doing a lot of work on your own mindset.
True.
And so then you're looking excited and looking forward to living into that and bringing out all of your experience in life and embracing it and using it to help you create this future that, by the way, it hasn't even unfolded yet. But yet we're thinking life is half over or things are over because we're perceiving that they have to be over because we're a certain age, when really the future hasn't even unfolded yet. You get to create it. You get to live it. You get to design it.
Right.
Well, that's a different mindset. That's very empowering. That's awesome.
So the thing is, just like with alcohol, right? If we don't start with ourselves as individuals, and reframing how we're thinking about it, then we don't get to see the changes in the bigger places. What will happen is without changing ourselves first, without understanding our beliefs and shifting our beliefs, then even when the environment around us changes, they won't stick. The changes won't stick because you're going to go back into your old patterns. And slowly, the little water drips slowly, the old patterns slowly show up and drip in. So then everything goes back and people can't, why are things not changing? What's going on? What's happening? And it's really because of our own subconscious hidden beliefs getting in our own way. And so that's why I think this thing about aging, you got to start with yourself. Yeah. And the same thing like with the alcohol, because notice a ripple effect that starts to happen in lives and families as one person makes the change.
Yeah, we were talking about that recently, that everything in our life levels up.
Right.
When you stop drinking. And it can level up if you have a different mindset around aging. There's a really cool story in the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, where she has a neighbor who's 90 years old. And this neighbor is like the world's leading expert on a subject. And one day Liz asked her, "You must have been studying this for your entire life." And she said, "No, I just started studying it at age 80 and now she's 90. So like hearing stories like that, you can go, well, I could have 2 other careers, by the age of 90, or I could, there's so much possibility.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And like, even for myself, I didn't become a flight attendant. Yes, I was in the airline industry, but I didn't become a flight attendant until I was 40. Then I didn't start figuring out how to do my own business until I was 60. And now who knows what I'm going to decide to do next when I'm 80. I don't know what I'm going to do. Because even like my own mom, she's 87. And she was just on the news like 3 weeks ago. And then they came, they do those little segments about the communities on the news in her local news. And she and his 3 other ladies, they call them the 80s ladies. They're all in their 80s and they all play tennis 3 times a week.
Wow.
And they beat the women that are in their 50s and 60s, and they interviewed them in there. So it's like they were 87, 88, 82, and I think 80.
Wow.
And they are playing tennis and beating these other women.
I love
That's
it.
So
amazing.
it's really like, who says? Like, it's really that like, well, first, I think when you change your mindset and like you bring it into like scientific, right? Then you start to look on purpose for examples like that. And even Brooke Shields' book, instead of going, oh, who is she to talk about that? And what does she think she's doing now? You become more open to like, I wonder what she has to say on this subject.
Yeah. Yeah.
She has a lot to say, by the way.
No, but you open yourself up to being curious about it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this idea too of like thinking about your thinking, we don't really think that we can think about our thinking, right? But we can.
Yeah.
Like we're the only creatures that can. We're the only animals because we have the prefrontal cortex. Our prefrontal cortex can look at our subconscious and go, what's going on down there? And we're the only, species that can do that. But that's such a gift but we are not taught that in school. We're not really brought up to realize that we can do that. And then once you apply it, like I learned it when I was changing my drinking as well. And then I applied it to the thoughts and beliefs I had around my marriage, which then up-leveled that. Thoughts and beliefs about my career, same as you. Yeah, this is my 3rd career. So who knows what's next? And my mom even said, well, I guess it's time for you to reinvent yourself. And I'm like, not sure that's a compliment, but yeah, I guess so. So
Again, it's like, okay, reinvent. What are you making that word even mean?
yeah, right.
Right?
So I had that thought. It was like, was that negative? Yeah.
Even if you think of like that word old, what do you make that word actually mean? It's simply a 3-letter word.
Right.
And just like reinvent, when she said that, like yours was, I don't know if that's a compliment where somebody else might think, yes, that's right. This is the exact right time to do that because I didn't want to keep doing that anyway. Again, that's where this kind of oxygen mask framework that I talk about, it really has more to do with if you're on the airplane, right? And the oxygen mask does come down, you do have to pause and you have to put it on and you need to take in a few breaths. And so that's kind of the framework, is really pausing. And now the next P I use for me is pray, but somebody else you could use pay attention if you're not a person that prays, right? And then you're going to pay attention to like what's going on around you. Or if you're a prayer, like ask for guidance, like what am I supposed to learn here? Whatever that is. But it's that pausing, putting on the oxygen mask, so to speak, breathing. And then the next P is to proceed with purpose. What do I want in this part of my life? If you're kind of being already scientific and curious, then the whole framework allows you, especially in those like lifey moments, to really slow down. And so that's one of the things that when I'm working with my clients that I help them with is to understand and learn that framework. And so then it's a framework that you can kind of apply to anything. And especially if you're choosing to work with a coach where they're helping you kind of get like a step back and slow down and reflect even on what do I actually want, and someone to hold the space for you and allow you to think about that in that time period you have with the coach, because maybe that's the only time in your life you get to do it. And then that's one of the benefits of working with a coach, because then that proceed with purpose, then you're knowing, okay, what is my own next best step?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so can you describe like how you've helped a client and how they've changed and how their life has changed from as far as how they perceive aging, or like when, they've paused, they've prayed and paid attention. I like putting the two together because I pray, but then once you pray, you got to pay attention to whatever you hear, right?
Right.
And then proceed with purpose. I love that. So like an example of how that's changed, or your life even, how that's shifted and changed.
Sure. Well, in one of the clients that I'm currently working with, the first thing I helped her with was exiting the drinking life. So in other words, she changed her whole relationship with alcohol. Then, and she's a doctor, or she was, she's now retired. And now we're working on what does she actually want to do. So now we're spending the time, I use like the aging flip kind of framework. Mm-hmm. And yes, it is designed around an airplane. So we have a cockpit and we have the wings and we have the body and then we have the tail and we have the fuel, right? And so she's working in those various aspects. And the first like 6 months or so, she just spent time paying attention to what do I actually want? Like what actually fuels me? What actually do I like? Because she retired from what she was doing. She'd stopped drinking, so she was living in her life her first year without alcohol in it, getting to know herself. Mm-hmm. And then, so now she has reframed and redesigned the relationship with her husband. It's far better. It's like a get a room kind of thing relationship with her and her husband now. Ooh. And then her kids, the same thing, that their kids don't live at home anymore. She's older, like she's in her 60s also. And so she's developing this more fulfilling and deeper relationship with her kids and figuring out, okay, now what is my role as mom? Because yeah, you have that title as mom, but as they grow and move out, it shifts and it changes. Mm-hmm. And she's wanting to make that the best that's possible. But yet she's still like being curious and scientific and exploring what does that actually look like for me and for my kids. And so it's really just kind of transforming her whole life. And we continue to work together and design that through.
That's amazing.
So tell me what an example of like the cockpit and the wings are in your, I get the fuel, but yeah.
Okay, well, so the cockpit is actually your mindset.
Your brain, okay.
Your brain, right? But it's also so part of the cockpit, because if you're going to be the captain, you need to navigate and know where you're going. Right. And so we need to start. And a lot of times, I don't know if you guys find this, but I find it when I'm working with people and I ask them, well, what exactly do you want? They don't know. People genuinely don't truly know. No. What they do know is they want something to be different. They know what they don't want, right, but they haven't really slowed down enough to what do I actually want? So for that, I have, it's called an exit compass.
Yeah. I love all your analogies. It's so fun. Yeah.
So when I do kind of that, and we're kind of using like the exit compass, it's really where the exit is, you're kind of examining and you're exploring things. And then the X for exit is you're Xing out thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors. And then you're igniting your curiosity. And then you're trusting yourself to figure things out. And where I help them with like that igniting your curiosity piece is this 5-word magic question that helps. So whenever you get yourself complaining, you would ask yourself, so what do I want? Because if you're complaining, it doesn't mean something has gone wrong or that you're broken in some way. It's simply a hint from your own self that you would like something different. And so that's your perfect time to really pause and ask yourself, so what do I actually want?
Yeah.
Because I know I don't want this, whatever that thing is you were complaining about. And if I could fix it, what would I fix it to? Maybe you can fix it, maybe you can't. But you start getting closer to understanding how to answer that question, what do you want? And you start getting closer to understanding who you are now in life and what it is that matters to you in life and what's important to you. And that's really kind of where the cockpit comes in, is understanding all of that. But then it's also, that's really where how all of it ties together. Because if you don't really understand that, then you don't really know, like, what is the direction I'm going, like mission, so to speak, that I'm working on right now. And then what are these behaviors I'm going to need to get there? And am I willing to get myself to do it? Because sometimes you're not, and that's okay too. And then you have the wings and the stability, but part of that is tied to what you do physically, what you eat, as well as your social connections. And then also kind of what brings you purpose. Because all of that is what allows you to thrive in your longevity years. And so all of it together. And so that's why it's a flight plan, and it's process, and it's 6 steps, but it takes little bits of time, just like the client I'm working with. It doesn't have to take 2 years. That's not it. But she just likes it. And she wants to keep doing it. Right.
I think that's
And so
great.
you go,
Yeah.
so we're just kind of constantly rotating around. And then it's a flight plan because then you can shift it and focus on, okay, what matters now? And what do I want to work about now? But then you have kind of a framework that you work with and these components in it. And which component seems like, so which component is off whack and which component is out of balance? And then the tail part, because the tail moves on the plane and guides and navigates you. And so part of that is the legacy and what is it you want to leave and the finances that you might need to be able to leave that legacy. So it's all tied together with like your mindset, your mental, your physical, your emotional, and your finances.
Yeah. And it sounds like that's amazing. But the first step, if we could put it in, like, what are you complaining about? And I even thought about like, because we did an episode a little while ago, like the shoulds, right? When you find yourself saying shoulds, then you can ask yourself this question. So what do I really want? Like, what do I want? And what do I want to do? Yeah. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, and that's true. The complaining and then also in the shoulds, that's the perfect time when you catch yourself, I call it shooting on yourself, right?
Yep.
When you catch yourself doing that, you can even just go, okay, but who says?
Yeah.
Because
That's a good
then
question.
that lets you get curious around where did this even come from? And do I actually even really want it? Is this a want I even had in the first place? Or is it a societal want or a family want or something I thought, say when I was 30, yeah, this is what I thought I wanted when I was 60, but turns out I'm now 60 and I don't want that.
Yeah. Because we changed. Like my husband and I have been married since I was 24. I'm like a different person and I've been maybe 2 or 3 different people along the way. I said, it's interesting for you. You don't need a new wife, but it's true. And sometimes it's like, wow, how did we stay married? Because we are like 2 totally different people now, but then sometimes those things can make you feel stuck. If somebody's expecting you to be the same person that you've always been, right? That can be something
Yeah.
that can.
What I hear is like you and your husband kind of changed together, but that doesn't happen in all marriages. So, what's cool about coaching and what Debi's describing is you can really discover who you really are. I mean, my 3 questions that are kind of like your 3 P's, Debi, are like, who am I? What do I want? And what is my purpose? And I work with in my coaching around, after they get alcohol free, that's kind of like, what's next? And then that might be, who are you? What do you really want? What is your purpose here on this planet? What are you doing here? And it's so cool to watch people and our clients just transform before our eyes, literally into different people. Like they look different, they act different, they have so much more positivity, this little like shining in their eyes. It's amazing. Isn't it amazing, you guys?
It's fantastic. And it's really fun that even during the hard parts for them, the coach is what lets you keep going when it's hard.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. I mean, if you really think about it, athletes, they want to be professional at whatever that is they're choosing to do. They hire a coach. Well, life is kind of your profession, right? It's your thing. You're not getting out of it until you're under the ground, right? So why not hire a coach to help you with the thing you're trying to work on in your life, whatever that thing may be.
To make it the best it can be. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of really helping yourself open up to nothing has gone wrong here because I'm seeking help. I'm seeking help because I want things to be different. Not, something's wrong with me because I need help.
Right. It's not I'm broken. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We go back to that's what
I
you brought
wanna
up
be.
first. Yeah. I know these are really crazy times right now. And I wanted to ask you this question. I thought of this question. So how can we find joy and purpose amidst all this uncertainty that's going on?
Well, again, that's really like one of those, lifey moments.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that getting curious with yourself, kind of pausing, doing the oxygen mask framework and letting yourself open up to what am I making all of this mean? What is making this hard for me? And what parts do I have control over? What parts can I change? What parts can I do nothing about? Right. and then also the really like focusing on for you what really matters and where's this fear coming from, so that you can, again, like what the oxygen mask framework talks about, proceed with purpose instead of reacting out of fear.
Got it. Yeah.
And that's really how, you can find, and then even in the moments, and even in our most lifeiest moments, if we understand it won't always be like this, if we can get ourselves to kind of get curious and go, well, so just like that, so what do I want question? So what is one thing that I liked about my day today? Because the truth is, if we're all honest, there are going to be days where it feels like there's nothing good in that day, whatever that is. And it doesn't really matter. Like, you don't have to be in a dramatic moment in your life, but there are times when there's just a day where it just doesn't feel like anything happened that you liked, right? But if you get yourself to pause and kind of go, okay, well, what is the one thing? And even if that was, when so-and-so did this thing where however they picked it up and they dropped it and they did this little curtsy or whatever, that made me smile and laugh, right? But if you can get yourself to slow down and really reflect on that, even when it feels extremely hard and very challenging and very difficult, because I know, like, my son is just retired from the military and he just moved from DC, and I was just talking to him, and there are several of his friends that have lost their job recently. And so they're going through some really tough times right now. Yeah. And it is tough, and acknowledging that it's got to be really tough. And even for yourself, this is really tough right now for me, and having the compassion instead of thinking, and I should feel different about it.
Yeah. Right.
And
acknowledging what is.
Finish the should, right? And and really acknowledging this is really tough for me right now.
Yeah. And then again, so what, and what do I want? Back to your magic question.
Exactly.
Your magic question.
Yeah, that is helpful, but sometimes you need to let yourself be before you try to change it.
I agree with that.
And
for
we
sure.
really a lot of times want instant fixing.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is the best place, and really answer the specific question, right? Is how can you find the joy? Sometimes the joy might actually be in letting yourself be in what it really is, because the design of the brain, it needs that balance of pain and pleasure to actually give you the dopamine, to not go below the line, and to really, so joy actually does involve partly pain. If you think about, it's really where the pleasure is in it, but also if you think about when you experience joy, it was actually the pain of getting through the hurdles of getting yourself to the other side of something.
Yeah, it's pain, pleasure. You can't experience all pain or all pleasure either. There's going to be a little bit, what is that like a pearl? There's a little bit of sand. There's a little bit of the pain and all the good, and there's a little bit of good and all the bad. Like it's you got to have both, really.
Yeah. And in her book, The Dopamine Nation, she talks about that really well.
Yeah.
And how it's really true. We need the brain and the body and the whole chemicals in our body. We actually need those pain points to offset, to help us really understand. Like, if you have too much pleasure, then your gremlins all go to the wrong side. And then it's almost like, just like when you have the alcohol and the dynorphin hits it and you get below the line, it's that same thing that starts to happen when you have too much pleasure. And especially that fake pleasure, that overstimulation of pleasure. Yeah. And then it gets off of balance. So the reality is, letting yourself be in the painful moment that you're in is how you're going to get to the joy.
Okay.
So wise.
We got
very wise.
Mic drop right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So Debi, this has been so exciting. Now, one of my favorite parts of our podcast is where we ask you, what do you do to feel lit alcohol free? What do you do?
Well, actually, things like this, that's one of my things. Yeah. I love hanging out with people that are curious about their life, curious about things, changing things, questioning things, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. The other thing I do is I am in the experiences with my grandkids. So, I do things like rock climbing with them inside, not on the walls outside, indoor rock climbing. And then I also go to have them come and hang out with my husband and I without their parents for 7 to 10 days. And yes, I'm exhausted. I have that pain all through it, but I'm also getting the joy. And we go and spend a lot of time. Right now, they're at this age where they love going to the water parks. Mm-hmm. So we go every single day that they're here. And I'm not sitting in the chair waiting for them to come down the slide. I'm in the line right behind them, experiencing the slides with them.
That's amazing, so awesome. Debi. And you know that one of my main reasons for becoming alcohol free was that I wanted to be that vibrant, energetic grandmother that's going to do exactly what you just said, Debi. And when I was drinking, I only could picture myself, like laying on the couch or, not engaging. And so I love that you're living into this vibrant grandmother and it's bringing you so much joy. Yeah, it's awesome. I want to be you when I grow up.
When those grandkids come, they're going to be so lucky. They're going to be like, I'm too tired. Grandma wore me out.
Yes, I want that. Debi, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for coming on to our podcasters and for our listeners who just want to learn more about you and connect with you. Where can they find you online or just to stay updated?
Okay. So if there's anything here that I shared that is actually like you're like nodding your head and thinking, yeah, that's me or that interests me, and you're curious about it at all, you can find me anywhere on Instagram, online, or on my website at Aging Flipped. So the website is agingflipped.com. And then on Instagram, it's also Aging Flipped. And I do talk a lot about the aging concept and stuff on LinkedIn too. Mm-hmm. And and then my LinkedIn profile is under my name. So those are the main places where you can find me and reach out and connect.
Yeah. And we'll put in the show notes below
all the links.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. And feel free to go over to YouTube and you can see our faces. And thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Debi, for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay.
Thanks so much for listening to Feel Lit Alcohol Free Podcast. Do you have a question you'd like us to answer on the show?
All you need to do is head over to Apple Podcasts and do 2 simple things. Leave a rating and review telling us what you think of the show. And in that review, ask us any questions you have about breaking free from wine or living an alcohol-free lifestyle.
That's it. Then tune in to hear your question answered live.
And remember, do something today that will help you feel lit.
Don't forget to check out Feel It 21.
Your alcohol-free adventure awaits.